having an argument.
Well,
All right.
my name is Chris. I'm the rustic caveman. This is Dad. His name is Marshall, and I guess he'd be Dad Caveman. I guess we'll go with that.
I'm the dad of the caveman, yeah.
All right.
This was an experiment to see if I could save the Swiss chard in zero weather, and I put about I say 2 ounces or 2 inches of mulch on top of the entire bed, which was producing at that time, and managed to lose it. I only have 2 plants left of the Swiss chard. So don't over mulch your Swiss chard in the future, because it'll survive anyway. So, okay. Now this bed has been completely refinished and planted. So the entire thing has seeds in it for Swiss chard. However, these are about ready to pluck. Going down here to the other side, I did this morning and cleaned out this bed here and put fresh topsoil on it. I'm ready to fertilize it, and that will be the little tiny cherry tomatoes. Now over here, this was an experiment.
You might get a theme to that. He experiments a lot.
The experimental?
You experiment a lot.
Yeah, I experiment a lot because I'm on a learning curve. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm kind of learning as I go. This bed was not supposed to work because it was not put in here according to all that we've heard and talked about. The bed on the other greenhouse was supposed to flourish. It completely died out. So I've learned something here. This requires a lot of nitrogen. So does that Swiss chard. But this requires a lot of nitrogen, and look what happened. I poured the nitrogen to it, and away we went. I only planted 4 foot of this bed simply because I expected it to die. It didn't. It's the way it works sometimes. So I refurbished this side and planted more. There's a little bit here and there coming up. You might want to get a picture of the little tiny ones coming out of their seeds. They're not coming up on that far side, but they expect to. And I put more nitrogen on here than what is recommended. And as I say, this is what we got. This over here is the onions. Again, this was a bit of an experiment because onions are not supposed to be able to be raised in high beds. This is a high bed. There you go. These are red onions. And I'm expecting them to actually do pretty well. They were planted in the fall. That was planted in the fall too, because it's a cold weather crop. This used to be my spinach patch. Well, there's one seed that decided to generate itself a little bit later than it expected. So here we have a single plant growing up in the onions. That's the way it works sometimes. I got this little item here. This is a battery operated rototiller because I'm getting old and it's kind of difficult to go mix the feed in the wheelbarrow and bring it in and dump it, the fertilizer and all of that. So when I do a bed now, I fill it full of the fresh topsoil. I put the fertilizer on the top, which is Miracle Grow, for these tomatoes which will be planted here, and use that to mix it in. Works great. I'll show you that on the outside. This is going to be more onions because we go through an awful lot of onions. So I think I'll probably put most of this in onions. Some of it will be leftover whatever stuff I get, because I normally have to buy 4 of something when I'm looking for 2, or I have to buy 6 when I'm looking for 4. So as a result, I have leftovers. This bed will be another learning curve. There is a new broccoli out, It's called Monterey. The broccoli is not a head. It grows up in shoots. So when the seeds come, which they were just been ordered, this bed here, which has already been fertilized and ready for it, according to what it says in the book as to what the pH is concerned and all that, which incidentally is 6.2 through 8. I will plant this and we'll come back and see how well it does. Again, this is a trial and error. First of all, I've never used that seed before. And secondly, I don't know if they do well in a raised bed or not. We'll find out. Now out here.
Well, let's go out there in just a second.
All right.
As a point of information for people, the frame is an old tarp building. So basically, it was a $700 tarp building that a friend of mine bought. He used it for a number of years. Gave it to me. I used it for a number of years. I brought it down here from Michigan, sans tarp, and we converted it into the greenhouse. It's got tie down straps. I'll show you that on the outside. And that zigzag wire channel stuff to help hold it together. So one of the channels that both Dad and I watch is Living Traditions Homestead. And early on in their last property, they had a couple of greenhouses, and it was put together this way. Wind strapping. And then this is that wiggle wire, I guess you can call it. Basically, it's just zigzag wire inside of a aluminum channel. You put the material on it, and then put the zigzag in it, and it holds it tight. And the straps tighten it up even further. We can roll that up for ventilation down at the bottom there, similar to how they have their greenhouses set up. Dad wanted me to add that it's you can see down at the bottom it's got a board. That board is actually attached through concrete, and this system is completely mounted in with concrete anchors. We've had, just in the last month, we've had several 50-mile-an-hour gusts of wind, even more 40s, 30s, sustained wind of 25 mile an hour. And as you can see, this greenhouse, which is now on its 3rd year, is holding up really well.
Yep. Good.
All right, talk about your beds.
Okay, this bed will be Brussels sprouts. Now, I had Brussels sprouts in the greenhouse. The first year they did real well. The second year they were covered with worms, and I had to deal with worms. The Brussels sprouts that I planted on the outside did not get the worms, and they did better than what I had on the inside. So this is going to be Brussels sprouts, and we'll see what we can do with that. Now, because of the pollinator shortage, bees and other bugs that help pollinate plants, there is a national push to get pollinator stuff going, and that's flowers and bushes. This will be a pollinator bed. The fertilizer, the Miracle Grow, is already on top to be put in the ground with that electric rototiller. And there it is. It will be. You'll have to come back to see how it does. I haven't sowed it yet. I got to mix up the fertilizer in it. This bed is not sowed down to here, but it has bushy material in it at this point. Bee balm is a bee, and I've always called it the corn plant, but it's not a corn plant. That's my brain is just gone. At any rate, it is a plant that attracts bugs, bees, whatever.
Cornflower?
Cornflower, thank you. But it has yet another name, so whatever it is. These beds are dormant at the moment because it's too early in the season to plant. That is set up for sweet potatoes. However, we had so many sweet potatoes out of it, I still have probably all the quartz except one that we canned from it. So it's going to be cucumbers. That bed is set up for cucumbers. Notice the wire behind it to tie the cucumbers up so that they hang rather than lay on the ground and rot. And then we have the potatoes, which are in the ground already, and then that covered bed is for beets. Now if we look over where the chickens are, that has to be worked because chickens like strawberries, and that is 24 foot of strawberries covered over with ground cover at the moment. So down on the hands and knees and cleaning it out. And then I will be building a cover over that, much the same as that cover, to keep the chickens from eating the strawberries. And then over there is asparagus. It's been recently, I see I have a chicken in there too. We have planted by seed the New Jersey variety, and from that 10 foot on down is Martha Washington. Martha Washington is a thicker, earlier growing. That really bushed out well as far as asparagus is concerned. The problem is that when you plant seed to get your asparagus, it takes 4 years before you can harvest. Now the rest of it looks like weeds. Well, that's because it is. This is primarily a for garlic. The garlic is going to be able to be pulled out of the ground in July, and then we're going to change the variety of garlic that we plant to a different variety. So that's the way that goes. Now the bed up at the top by the smaller greenhouse. This Guernsey Seed Company has a good variety of milkweed, common milkweed. So I bought enough to fill this. I've done them by seed before and they came up, some of them, not all the seeds germinated, but this time I got bare roots. So this is it looks blank, but that's got a lot of milkweed in there to attract the monarch butterfly, which is another beneficial insect that is on the decline because it doesn't have enough milkweed to eat, considering that the only thing that the monarch eats is the milkweed. And they eat it. Of course, it looks ratty when they eat it, of course, but it sponsors them, and then they go off and have little babies. This is, I didn't do this right. This is a bush. I didn't realize that that was a bush that was going to grow somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 foot high, and probably that much wider. So I'm going to lift it and put it over there with the other pollinators. This is lavender, the original lavender. The kind that you can make tea out of and whatever else you do with lavender. I'm using lavender to attract beneficial bugs because bees like lavender real well. Now if you'll follow me out here. Alrighty, this greenhouse was the original greenhouse, and we've gotten a lot of Swiss chard out of here, we've gotten a lot of onions out of here, a lot of lettuce out of here. I wouldn't recommend that you try kohlrabi. This is going to be more onions. This is already planted from here up. One little onion, and that was done 2 days ago. Here's one onion coming up. It has been well fertilized. Onions also like nitrogen, and I had very small bulbs in some of my stuff because they didn't have enough nitrogen to build the bulb and enough potash to complete the growth cycle. This is now planted to lettuce. This will be, because my number one son likes those peppers that'll burn on the way up and burn on the way down. So this is where it was going to be put, those peppers, because they like a lot of heat. They grow better when they are warm and comfortable. So when the temperature's right, I'll get the plants. We're going to have
Jalapeno.
jalapeno, thank you. Jalapeno, 2 plants of jalapenos in here. That should take care of it. You can freeze jalapenos, I understand.
Yep, you can also make cowboy candy.
Okay, well.
Go.
All right, this bare piece of ground will now be, pretty soon, I've got the timber, it's behind you, to build raised boxes for this. This is going to be basically an experimental pea patch. We're going to grind up the ground, we're going to put the raised box on it. The posts are in the ground because I have to have at least 24 inches between the boxes so that I can get the mower back and forth to keep the grass nice and pretty and eventually the garden nice and pretty. So this is something you'll come back and see later after we get it in the ground and planted.
This is all that's left of the 105 bags of topsoil that we brought back from Bidwell Hardware in 2 trips because it was wet and very heavy, and my pickup truck did not want to take the entire skid. I had to break it in half. Anyway, these will be gone in a few more days, most likely.
Yep. Well, I'll be storing what we have left. Now, you saw on another video, companion to this one, we cleared quite a bit of ground over there.
That was the one that came out Sunday night.
Yeah, all right. That used to have a fence line across it. It used to be just nothing but brambles. And as you saw on the Sunday night video, we ripped all the roots out. The next thing is to bring in the rototiller and till up the ground. And because that pile of brush was on here, I didn't get to fertilize this section of the garden where the brush was. So this is why the bucket. So we just go down the row and put the fertilizer in. This ground is too high in pH. So there's a lot of sulfur in here to bring down the fertilization of the pH. You don't particularly want a whole lot of pH.
You mean
You need about 6.8 to do the job right.
yeah, it's also got this is the section that's also got a lot of potassium.
Yeah, it also takes care of the potassium. Now, while we're down here at this end of the garden, I'll set this as my marker. This area here will be fenced between the posts, 2 rows. The fence is on these T-posts. The objective is to plant the acorn squash, the yellow squash, and all those good squashes that we like to eat right beside that fence wire, and then tie them up so that they will not lay on the ground and rot. So all of this will be fenced and planted. Now, we might show another experiment.
This right here where the chicken is at is a bed full of Jerusalem artichokes or sunchokes. They actually probably should be thinned, and but that's just basically our emergency survival food. You can see how big the stalks are. They're actually coming out from underneath the bed and expanding out into the rest of the yard, which is normal for them. Yeah. And right there are ramps. We're trying to grow our own batch of ramps since I can't seem to find them anywhere on this property.
And there you got it. Now they've expanded because we lost a lot. And I'm going to add some more stuff to the bed and put a little bit more fertilizer on it. Again, a kind of a low level nitrogen is what ramps like. But I'll tell you what we're going to use is when Chris cleans out the chicken house, we're going to put a lot of chicken
excrement
crap on there. And of course all of these vines will be down. This is a good example of what we had to work with when we tore that fence out. But that ground is choice.
Well, yeah. Previous videos for this particular section, there's actually been 4. Not the least of which was the skid steer back last fall when I knocked down a bunch of this stuff. And then about 2 months ago, we scraped this entire area with the tractor. I moved all the tree debris over to the side. Made the pile over here. And so this has actually been in a process over the last couple of years to get back to something that's usable.
Now we're going to be putting elderberries, a row of elderberries 12 foot from these trees, and that is a maple tree over there. Elderberries do not like maple, they do not like pine trees, so they won't be planted anywhere around the drip edge of that maple. From that drip edge boundary, we're going to have them go all the way up. Elderberries make good wine, make good pie. Some people don't like it because it's a little tart.
And as a former owner of a brewery shop, I still have a lot of supplies in the warehouse.
This section here is prime real estate. It hasn't been touched except for growing grass and vines and all kinds of other stuff, but it's not been gardened. Oh, incidentally, that used to be an apple orchard over there. So much for that. This is where the butternut squash is going to go, and it's going to be grown in a hoop, a hog wire actually, put down like so, grounded, and then so that the squash can grow up and over the hoop. It worked real well. I had good experience with that when I planted it here. But this is better ground, this little section. Then from there on down, till you get to the drip edge, will be zucchini. So that's about where we're at. Now, this is a work in action, so you'll have to come back and see it later.
Well, the next video they see on this will be rototilling with the big rototiller when we do all of it. And then probably a June update with everything growing. And then probably August and in October when we start firing up the greenhouse again.
Yeah, we'll be planting cold weather crops in the greenhouse again. The spinach, incidentally, is ready to harvest, and this is the very beginning of April, so it can be done. So I'll go ahead and finish my fertilizing.
What zone are we here?
We are 6B. So 6B isn't such a bad zone to be in. Except when we get 0-degree weather for about 2 weeks in a row. Then we got problems.
This is Dad's domain. I do not have a green thumb. I read a lot. I know how it's supposed to work, but in practice, not so much. My name is Chris. I'm the Rustic Caveman. This is Marshall, Dad Caveman. We're in the garden. I hope you enjoyed this video. There'll be more to come along this same type of series. As always, please comment. If you like the video, subscribe, share, you know, all the social media stuff. Anyway, I'm getting ready to go cook dinner. Y'all have a good time. Have a great night. Talk to you later. Good night.